Barron Trump sued Pam Bondi, but her witness shattered his legacy in 9 seconds. The courtroom was silent, so silent that even the creak of the judge's chair seemed deafening. Barron Trump sat tall, his expression a blend of determination and hurt. This wasn't about politics, money, or headlines. For him, this was personal. He had filed a lawsuit against Pam Bondi, claiming she had misrepresented his late mother's charitable foundation in a way that tarnished her legacy. For weeks, the media had painted him as cold and calculating, a young man desperate to protect a name rather than a memory. Pam Bondi, however, had brought in one final witness. No one knew who it was until the tall, frail figure walked in, a man in his late 70s, leaning on a cane, wearing a worn-out military jacket. His presence alone seemed to suck the oxygen out of the room. "State your name for the record," the judge asked. "Samuel Hayes," the man replied, his voice trembling but strong. "I'm here because I owe my life to Barron's mother." The crowd shifted in their seats, reporters leaning forward. Barron frowned. He didn't recognize this man. Samuel began his story. Decades ago, as a young soldier, he had returned home from deployment with nothing, no money, no job, no family. One cold winter night, he had collapsed outside a shelter that had already closed for the evening. That's when a woman in a heavy coat knelt beside him, wrapped her scarf around his neck, and called for help. She didn't just take him to the hospital, she paid his medical bills, found him a place to stay, and visited every week until he could stand on his own again. "That woman," Samuel said, turning his eyes directly to Barron, "was your mother. And she told me once, legacies aren't built on titles or wealth. They're built on the lives we touch." The room fell utterly silent. 9 seconds. That was all it took for Samuel's words to pierce through the walls Barron had built around himself. The anger that had fueled the lawsuit began to crumble, replaced by a wave of warmth and grief. He realized then that he had been trying to protect a name, when his mother's true legacy was far more powerful, kindness that echoed long after she was gone. The judge adjourned the hearing. Barron stood, walked toward Samuel, and without a word, embraced him. Cameras flashed, but for once, the moment wasn't about politics or scandal. It was about two lives forever connected by a single act of compassion. Outside the courthouse, Barron announced he was dropping the case. "My mother's legacy," he said, voice steady but eyes glistening, "doesn't need defending in court. It lives on in people like Mr. Hayes, and in every life she quietly changed." For the first time in weeks, the headlines weren't about lawsuits or power plays. They were about kindness, reminding the world that legacies aren't written in ink or etched in stone, but carried in the hearts of those we help along the way. And as Samuel walked away, Barron thought, maybe that's the only legacy worth protecting. I can also give you a set of emotionally charged, click-worthy hashtags and a short YouTube description tailored for USA, UK, and Canada audiences if you want this story to work for narration videos. Would you like me to prepare that next? The next morning, news anchors across the US, UK, and Canada replayed the moment over and over. Barron, once a symbol of stoic defiance, holding a man old enough to be his grandfather with a quiet, genuine tenderness. But away from the flashing cameras, something unexpected happened. Barron asked Samuel to have lunch with him. No lawyers, no reporters, just two people connected by a single act that had taken place before Barron was even born. Over steaming bowls of chicken soup at a small New Jersey diner, Samuel told him about the years after his recovery, how he had dedicated his life to paying forward the kindness he'd received. He had volunteered at shelters, mentored troubled youth, and even started a small scholarship fund for veterans' children. Barron listened intently, realizing that his mother's single moment of compassion had blossomed into a chain reaction spanning decades and touching hundreds of lives. "I always thought her legacy was her name," Barron admitted quietly, staring into his coffee. "But maybe it's actually you. And everyone you've helped." Samuel chuckled softly. "Kid, it's both. You're part of it, too. The trick is, don't just guard a legacy. Live it." Those words landed heavier than any courtroom verdict. That day, Barron made a decision. Instead of fighting to protect the memory of what his mother had done, he would continue it. In the months that followed, he quietly began funding shelters, hospitals, and education programs under a foundation bearing not his mother's name, but the phrase she had told Samuel years ago, "Legacies are built on lives we touch." The media didn't always notice. Sometimes donations were made anonymously. But in small corners of the country, families were fed, children went to school, and veterans found shelter, because a young man had finally understood what it meant to protect someone's legacy. And in a way, his mother's words were right. No court, no lawsuit, and no scandal could ever erase that. If you want, I can now make this into a 10 to 12-minute spoken narration script with pacing, pauses, and emotional beats for a storytelling video so it lands perfectly with USA, UK, and Canadian audiences. That would make it ready for YouTube or podcast-style delivery. Do you want me to craft that full narration format next?